Right, this is what it's all about for the freelance businesses, but specifically the software engineers out there. Okay, this is a bit about me. I've done a lot of international public speaking. In fact, I was talking to Anna just before and saying about the various areas of the Southeast Europe that I've been to, and a couple of years ago I was out in Serbia doing a talk at a conference there. There was about 400 and odd people attending, and again it's the issues that you have in different parts of the world are the same issues we have in the UK, in the States, in Australia, in every language, and that's an important aspect. Anyway, I started my first business when I was 12 years of age. Now, I'm not bragging about this, but it taught me some very, very important aspects about business itself. I lived by the coast, and a little village just by a beach. It was a fantastic upbringing, and I love fishing. And I used to go fishing on a regular basis, often without my parents knowing. And I used to take a boat out at the age of 12, row into the middle of the bay and catch fish. And then I'd come back and I'd sell them on the beach. And what I found was that a lot of people said I didn't want to buy my fish, even though they admired how wonderful they looked. And I couldn't understand this. And I learned so many things in those first few days of running that little business, just to make a bit extra pocket money, about things like market research. How many of you have actually asked a customer why they haven't accepted your pitch? How many of you have gone back afterwards and said, thank you very much for letting me know that you don't want to use our services, but could we ask the question why? Because if you don't ask why, you don't know how to cure the problem. And that's what I first did. I asked the people who said no, why don't you want to buy these wonderful fish? Because you just said how much you like them, and how much you like fish. And the answer was because they were going to be on the beach for another couple of hours. It was warm and sunny, and the fish would deteriorate. So I found a way of freshening up. And also I just used to come in later when I'd been out fishing, so that just as people were leaving the beach, so they would buy my fish. And I learned a lot of other things about contract law, about offers and things like that. But the important thing was, it is about the customer, because without customers, we don't have businesses. We don't have a freelance business. We don't have income. And those are so important to so many people. And one of the things that I've noticed over the years, or a little bit more over the years, I've been involved in electronics, engineering, heavy industry, innovation, R&D, and in recent years with marketing and communications. When I say recent, in the last 25 years, I've been involved with marketing and communications, because the one area that I understand is missing in this digital world is the fact that it isolates us from the customer. Okay, and this is the thing, whatever sector we're in, whatever we do, the customer is key. Okay, so think about who your customers are and what they are doing and how they think of things. Because if you don't understand what they are doing, and if they don't understand you, there's a clash, there's a barrier that is hard to break down. And it's for you to break that barrier down rather than for them to learn your language to be able to understand what you're doing. Okay, you are power users, as software developers, as software engineers, you are classed as power users. Okay, and when it comes to, especially when it comes to IT and technology in general, people assume that you are power users, whether you are or not. The perception is that you are power users because you understand how it all works. Okay, and you may not, but you are closer to that that coal face than the general public, all the other people out there. And I think it's important to understand that you're treated like that. How many of you have been at an event and someone's computer doesn't work or someone's presentation doesn't work and you're called upon because you work in IT? And you might not know how that computer works and that sort of thing, but you're asked to do it. It's happened to me many times. Okay, you have privileged knowledge as well, because you understand how the processes work for the technology to work. Okay, but think about your customers. The vast majority of them don't. Okay, if you look at the consumer market, or even if you look at the B2B market, the business to business market, there's a lot of people out there who do not understand how it works. There's often a question I ask at conferences and in open discussion. I ask, it's a fundamental, how many people drove to the event that day? And lots of hands would go up. And then I ask the question, how many of you know how the internal combustion engine works? There's one or two who do, but the vast majority of people don't. And yet they were able to use the tool. And I think the thing is what you use the tool for, the software in your case, and not how it works is important to the customer. Okay, so what gains do they get from it? Okay, and when you're dealing with it, see, the thing is, it's split into two areas here. When you're dealing with agencies, intermediaries, they're looking for your skill sets. Okay, but what happens is, when you're dealing with customers, the next stage, the freelance director client, which is always the better place to be. Yes, agency work will bring you business and it'll keep you busy, but do you get the best value for your skills? Okay, I've always worked on the principle that freelancer working directly with the customer removes that margin that intermediaries take. I mean, it's not the case for all people. Some of you like working with agency work because you have one project at a time, whereas in freelance director client, you may have 2 or 3 clients. Okay, how many can you handle? So again, about the marketing and the promotion that you do and the communications you have with your customers, it varies. Okay. You know a lot more about the software and the languages that you speak. And for that matter, how many of you know how many languages there are, spoken languages there are in the world? You'd be surprised perhaps to know that it's over 7,000. And those are in daily use. How many software languages are there out there? And I'm talking about legacy software as well as modern software or current software. And it's estimated there's over 700 plus. Okay, and I've just done a quick survey on that matter. So your language isn't necessarily a customer's. Okay, so you've got to think, how do I speak to my customers? I'm going to ask a question here, and you can put comments in the chat. And if Anna, if you see them, can you call them out if they come through? How many of you understand the steps in the customer purchase or the customer journey from not knowing to purchase? So put an estimate of how many steps there are, if you could. Is anyone answering the question? I hope so.
5-10. Elena says 5-10.
5 to 10.
3.
Okay. 3, someone? I think this is one of the interesting things, not just from the software development industry, but also with all industries. They think that most people engage with a company once they come onto the website. They never consider the bits before. And this is one of the things which I'm going to go through in the next few slides. There are 4 phases or 4 stages in the customer journey. The first one being not knowing. Okay, this is the pre-purchase position. Okay, and hard as it might be to believe, there are more people who don't know you exist or don't know your service exists than do. Okay, I use the word ignorance, but it's not ignorance in general, it's ignorance about you. They do not know you exist. They do not know your product exists because it's not part of their daily business routine. So what are they buying? Okay, and this is the thing that you have to do, is understand what they are buying rather than what you're selling, because you're selling coding, whereas the buyers are buying the ability of that coding to do the things they want to do. Okay, so how do you engage with that company or those people? And it's people rather, even though I say the word company, it's about individuals within that company, influencers, the decision makers within that company. How do you get them to see what you do? Okay, if you talk in C++, Java, Fortran, or whatever languages that you use, software languages that you use, if you talk in those languages, they don't understand it because it's not interpreted. They can't translate that into what they're looking for. What they're looking for is a software system that will help them to run a more efficient business. So what they're buying is different from what you're selling. So when you engage with them, if you want to get them to discover what you're doing, you have to talk to them through your touch points, which are your articles, your social media broadcasts, your profiles in various things like LinkedIn and everything else. So what you need to do is to try and speak in their language and talk about what they're looking to buy that you can actually produce. Okay. Once they've discovered it, they will do research. Okay. Then they'll do interest and desire. It's part of an old marketing technique of AIDA, attention, interest, desire, action. And the things that they are looking for, if it sparks their interest because they have an issue at that time, it helps you to communicate. They will communicate with you. They will engage with you, but only in a very transitory way. We often find that people will visit a website 5 or 6 times before they start the purchase process. Okay. They will discuss it and reflect on it with their people if they've got the interest and the desire to move forward with it. And then they negotiate, but it's not with you. One, they will negotiate with themselves or with their team in the company. And think about that. They do their own negotiations before they even approach you. So you've got to think about how that happens. And as we go through each process, the messages you give out will change. They will change to suit these particular parts of their journey. Okay. Normally, if anybody wants to jump in with a question, please do. I can see there's a couple of chats up there. The customer journey 2. This is the second section now, and this is where they go to the purchase. This is when they may arrive, or they've spoken to you, and you may have put a proposal together to send out to them. Okay, that's where you can on-sell and upsell, but be very careful with that, because you don't want to oversell something that they are, try not to sell them more than they need. Don't sell them I did images of strange things then. Don't try to sell them a Rolls-Royce solution for a very simple one. Okay, listen to the customer, and this is the important thing. It's about communicating. It's about listening to what they've got to say. The next phase, okay, is they receive the product or they start using the product. Okay, they implement it and use it, and that's when they do an evaluation. Okay, you might have evaluation stages in between. Okay, but that's where they do the evaluation, and this is a very important part. Most people neglect that part. Okay, the first part they neglect. They're only interested when people are actually engaged with them. You've got to encourage that engagement. Okay, and the only way that evaluation works is if you communicate. And I think there was a couple of people who said earlier on, Pirit said that about understanding the customer and keeping in touch with them, being open. I think that's an important aspect, and I did compliment her on that. And it's something that you need to be thinking about, because we found in many situations that people, especially in the software and the web development and anything to do with technology, the IT industries, they tend to be quite remote. Okay, they're hard to communicate with, and it's an important aspect that you need to try and remove, because if you were easy to communicate with, then people are going to use you. Another thing that came up a little bit earlier, which was quite interesting, was Barry, who was speaking this morning. He said about the things that concern them the most, and these are the things you should be focusing on. How do you express quality? How do you express security? There's a huge issue, because sometimes you'll be working on coding that is commercially sensitive to that company. Okay, so how do you engage and talk to them about that? Have you got that in your website? Have you got that in your profile? Okay, and oddly enough, when I've been going through looking, doing research on this over the last couple of weeks, especially in the software development area, it's very hard to find out things about software developers as individuals unless you go to the platforms. Okay, the platforms that find you work. It's a barrier to the customer. And it seems like you put up a lot of barriers especially in the software industry. Now, I'm not saying everyone does, but the ones I've looked at, there is a tendency to. Okay. The final stage, another one that thing is the follow-up. How many of you go after and ask for recommendations and referrals for your profiles, not just in the platforms, but also on things like LinkedIn? Okay, those are so important to you because it's the validation that you are as good as you say you are. Okay, and the more people say about you, the more that other people say about you, the better it is for trust, for security, and for quality. Those are the things that you need to be thinking about, okay, in your communications. So the internet is a wonderful self-service environment. Unfortunately, not everybody wants self-service. People want to talk. And it's the communications that you have with your customer, the engagement that you have, that's the essence of it all. Now, I know what it's like. You get a project, you start working on it, you get tied down on that, you stop doing your promotion, you stop doing your marketing, and you just move on into your project, and then suddenly the project comes to an end, and then you've got a gap. And in that gap, you rush to try and get a new customer. You should be continually engaging with potential customers all along that route. Okay, never leave it to the last minute, because as I've seen in a lot of projects, people suddenly they put up open for work on their LinkedIn profile. Okay, it should be a situation where you're always open for work. It's an assumption that that's why you're on there. So how are you engaging with your clients? How are you speaking to them? Where are the touch points you are putting out there to get people to engage with you? Okay. Yes, you're trying to help customers. Yes, you're trying to go things up, but we've seen from a lot of the widgets that people put on their websites and everything else to help are often not taken up because many people have difficulty in the typing regime. But a lot of the people who want to engage with you want to use a voice because it's a lot easier for them. And we've lost all those face-to-face meetings at the moment and have done for the last, since lockdown started 2 years ago. So it's about you adapting to getting out there and speaking to your customers. Don't put up barriers. Frequently asked questions should always be a temporary. I'm sure many of you put these up on your websites and on your profiles and stuff. But if it's a frequently asked question, then you should answer that within the project, that's within your profiles and within your websites and everything else. AI responses. Now, this is something that I've been looking at over the last couple of years since they've started to become more popular. And I know back in the summer or back in October, there was a talk on AI solutions for answering questions from customers. And one of the things with those is that they are so automated that they become an annoyance. And I don't know if many of you have used any of these systems, but it's quite interesting to see how you can bluff them quite easily. But I'm not going to go into detail on that at the moment, but it's something that a lot of people don't like. They want to speak to people. Remember, there's lots of people who want a self-service environment, but there are also as many people who want to speak to the supplier. Okay. Direct mail, pop-up, another. Okay. Right. Time to talk. Make direct contact. Okay. Engage in conversations. This is one of the things I found is most effective in all social media platforms and in all communications is get into the conversation. Be the one driving it, if not joining into it. Okay. There's plenty of subjects you can do. Speak in their language. Don't use jargon. Don't talk about the software and get excited about it, but just speak on the jargon. Leave the jargon out. Pay attention to what they're saying. Listen. It's a very important aspect. Ask the question, listen to the answers, because that's where you will find the opportunities for your business and for your work. Okay. Yeah, as I said earlier, often what they need is not what they are. I've just lost for words there. Do not jump to conclusions. Don't give them, as I said, a Rolls-Royce solution for a very simplistic result. Okay, use the language of the customer. Okay, right, I think that's, yeah, try talking. Stop maintaining your distance. I found, I'm sorry, I'm not going to blame all people the same, because I know some of you are very, very good at this, but a lot of freelancers tend to keep their distance because they work on their own. They get into a sort of silo of their own. And if you talk, you learn. If you speak to people, if you communicate, if you understand what people are saying, then it helps you to design, write, communicate the things that they want to hear. So join these seminars, join in other conversations, go where your customers are. Okay, IT people, you are the highest users of help systems. You use them, but not all the customers that you want to communicate with do. Okay, most of the people hate them, as I said, and they just get more confused, because when you speak, it's easier to communicate than when you just type. Okay, because the emotional communication, I find it much easier to stand in front of an audience of 700 people than it is to do it to a microphone and a camera. Okay, right, start and join the conversation. LinkedIn, Twitter, previous clients and associates, get in touch with them. Okay, avoid the wall of silence, answer the phone, recognize that you might be comfortable with a typed conversation, but are they? Okay, think about the customer and make it part of your own way of working. Don't make yourself difficult to work with. Okay, and that's what a lot of people have found.